Hello and welcome today. It's been a minute since I have been here hosting a gathering, and I've been dealing with some health issues. And good to note that things I'm on the mend and all is well. So, welcome here. I have invited both men and women to be here today because I would love to speak to both sides of um, awareness around our generational lineage, how what we saw modeled by our parents and our grandparents, and how that actually affected us. And I think it's important and lovely to talk about it. And there's no shame, there's no blame. We're not blaming our forefathers, foremothers, who came before us because they were always doing the best that they could with what they had been given by their parents. So to step into this, um, I think it's interesting to have both here and both kind of talking, creating some dialogue around how men and women were shaped and the strategies that we started to use because of those, how we were shaped, and then what is starting to heal now. There's no generation that has had perfect conditions. It's we're human, and there's no perfect humans. And every generation developed different strategies to survive what love looked like at the time. And it's interesting because I don't know. I mean, we have different ages here. I invite old and young clients and not clients, family and friends to just be willing to maybe step into slow time and to be more present. Because when we are living in our thoughts, we are elsewhere. It's impossible to be present when we're thinking about and contemplating, worrying about, or sad about things that happened in our past or things that we don't know yet. And we base our painful past, we bring that into a fearful future. So when we can you see how powerful it is to be aware of these patterns that have kind of played out, not knowingly so much, not in our awareness. So now we bring our awareness closer to the front where we can ask questions and be really honest and curious about what did work growing up, what worked for my parents and grandparents, and what didn't work. And how do I want to move forward? How do I choose to move forward? So I want to break this down. So we're starting with the boomers, and that generation spans between people born between 1946 and 1964. And they were raised by the silent generation. They were coming out of war. There was a lot of scarcity. These were the themes, and emotional restraint. For men, how they were parented is that fathers were distant and more authoritarian. The mother often felt overworked and she was very practical. And praise came through achievement, and feelings were rarely discussed. The strategies that children, men especially, because I'm going to go through how the women kind of were shaped by these themes, but men first, the strategies that were formed was to provide, to endure, to stay strong, and to have your emotions handled privately. So silently, like what they saw modeled, right? What didn't work is that there was difficulty with intimacy because when there's silence, there's no communication. There can't be connection when you're disconnected from self. So, and we know that more and more now. Nobody was talking about this then. Nobody had the resources or the tools to know how to do something different. It just was such a rare thing. So, what didn't work again is difficulty with intimacy, and work became someone's identity. They just threw themselves into their work, and that became their life. Vulnerability felt very dangerous for men because it was seen as weakness. Now we understand what strength and what courage and bravery it takes for a man to finally, after all these generations, choose to have the courage to be vulnerable and show up and feel his feelings so he can be in a relationship and have intimacy with himself first and all of his emotions and his thoughts and all those things in order to be able to show up in relationship in the same way that he's in relationship with himself. So what is healing now for boomers, men, is late life emotional opening. They've had enough lived experience, and they've, been around enough younger generations to realize that, wait, it doesn't work when we shut down and have walls around our heart, when we're unwilling to have the courage to show up for ourselves. That's an old thing that has died and is dying. So they're healing by feeling late life emotional opening, grief and tenderness finally emerging, allowing the grief of never feeling super intimately connected to someone, especially self, and the desire for real connection with partners and children. That's what's starting to heal now for men. The invitation here, when emotions do come up and it feels heavy, and you maybe are still working through what that feels like, and to have the courage to do so, put your hand on your chest, take a slow, deep breath, and ask the question, what have I carried alone for a long time? This takes radical self-responsibility, but that is the bravest thing that any man or woman can do. So when you're willing to do that, you cross boundaries within yourself that make you more available to yourself and to others. Okay, let's talk about the women boomers, how they were parented. They were taught to support men. That's what they saw modeled, and not that I'm not blaming this, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but with that teaching, spoken and unspoken, what they saw modeled, and was that their worth was tied to caretaking, taking care of others. And so they had limited autonomy because they were so busy taking care of everyone, and their emotions were often minimized. So they didn't see their mothers and fathers emoting or regulating their own emotions. So there was once again, no way to really know how to show up for themselves. And the strategies that formed through this type of parenting was, for women, self-sacrifice, harmony, keeping the harmony, people pleasing and fawning, kind of being more curious and aware of other people's emotions and wanting there to be peace. So keeping the peace, self-sacrificing what they're actually feeling, and suppressing their personal needs. So after years and years of that, I sit with women who have no desire what their yeses are and what their nos are, because they've suppressed their needs so much, they don't understand what it is that they actually desire from a partner, in relationship, from themselves. So what is starting to heal now for women that were raised as boomers is reclaiming their voice. Their throat chakras are starting to open up, and they're speaking their truth. They're learning what they're available for and what they're actually not available for. There's more independence. There's more desire for partnership instead of just one-way relationship of giving, giving, giving until there's nothing left to give, and they are exhausted and depleted and confused. The somatic invitation here is more grounded. It's to put your feet on the floor, to feel yourself present, and ask, what do I need that I've never been able to ask for? And that can open up energetic channels inside of you that you'll start to feel those answers come up, not as downloads. I used to think that I would get downloads when I'd sit and meditate, and I realized one time as I was sitting, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not actually a download, it's actually an upload. This wisdom lives in each one of us, and when we can be more still, that's when the answers start to flow. It's impossible to feel our heart's desire and to listen to our soul's guidance, our intuition, our gut knowing, our inner knowing, if we're busy, perpetually busy. serving others, or even just performing or distracting ourselves or numbing out. So we move on to Generation X, Gen X, born between the years of 1965 and 1980. And this generation was raised by the boomers. So they were providers. There's still less emotional availability. So let's go into the men that are the Gen Xers, how they were parented. There was much more freedom and less supervision. They were expected to toughen up. I think the message was more like big boys don't cry. That's probably spans between the boomers and Gen Xers. And emotional life was rarely guided because those parents were raised by the silent generation. They're still pretty silent. How could they ever think to show up for their children's emotional life if they've never shown up for their own? So the strategy that men formed as boomers, as Gen Xers with parents as boomers, was self-reliance, humor, and competence, and don't be a burden to others, right? I don't know if any of this lands for some of you. If it does, please put something in the chat so we can discuss this. I'm curious to know how this has moved through you and what generation you land in, and if any of this resonates with you. So what is healing now for the men that are Gen Xers is they are learning how to receive. Receiving is a very feminine, conscious feminine energy. And rarely did we see it modeled by our parents, male and female, because it's such a rare thing, because all we saw modeled and all that was given importance and our worth was so tied to performance that in order to receive, we need to be backing down to receive. Can you see how that's a feminine energy that's conscious? It's not isolating and hidden and internalizing shame. It's actually open to receive. That's conscious feminine. Conscious masculine, wounded masculine is out here trying to control and manipulate circumstances and people in our lives so we can feel safe. But when the conscious masculine arrives, it actually is giving as much as it's receiving. So it's a balanced masculine and feminine energy. It's not trying to control when it's up and out like masculine energy does. When it's conscious, it's up and out, creating stability and structure for the feminine to be able to rest into and open and receive. And it goes both ways. Okay, so what is healing now for men, the Gen Xers, is the learning to receive. We just discussed that. And they're more willing to be in therapy and to have coaching and to learn the skills of intimacy, of vulnerability, of the courage to show up for themselves so they can do it with their partners and their children and everyone in their lives. And everything, let's talk about that. Everything is energy. So how we are in relationship to ourselves and with ourselves, we will be to equal measure in relationship with everything outside of us. Money, the energy of money, the energy of physical intimacy, our sexuality, our partnerships, our friendships, our work life, all of those are informed by how we are in relationship energetically with ourselves. How open are we to receive compassion and care and tending from ourselves? When we can do that, men and women alike, then we start to see our reality shift because we are giving and receiving compassionately here. Of course, that flows out into the rest of our lives, and things start to shift energetically because we're doing it here first. So the third thing that's beginning to heal for men as Gen Xers is becoming more emotionally available fathers and partners. And that is beautiful. The somatic invitation here is to do a feminine thing that may feel very weird. It's to come back and down, ground yourself in, and let gravity support you. It's a masculine energy that lives everywhere. Have you ever felt supported by the masculine and the feminine, Gaia, and all that is to support you and say to yourself, I don't have to do this alone anymore. That's a beautiful invitation. Okay, the Gen Xer women, how we were parented is we were encouraged towards independence. And we still absorbed our mother's exhaustion because she was still overworked and not like disconnected from self and kind of put herself at the back of the line. So that's what we saw modeled. And we often became emotionally mature early because we started to be the latchkey kids, the kids that were left home alone while our parents were both off working or in school or whatever that looked like. And the strategies that we formed was hyper capability. We could do it. We were fiercely independent and capable. We were responsible. We began to believe that we had a responsibility for everyone because if we were parentified, which means that we were stepping up as parent, the role of parent, because our parents were largely a lot of the time absent, for not all of the time, but it could have looked like that. And so we as daughters became the ones who had to show up as a mother to some of our younger siblings or even older siblings if that was the case. The dynamics are also complicated and layered, but we often became emotionally mature early because of our need to take care of things that someone else wasn't taking care of. So hyper capable, responsible for everyone, and strong and adaptable, right? If things weren't working, we'd step in and we'd fix it. We were the fixers. And what didn't work was that we became burned out and we attracted partners who needed mothering because we became so good at that. It became our normal. And it didn't feel off to have emotionally lacking men that we were attracted to because that was the energy we were sending out, is that we were fixers. Let me fix you without even knowing that's what was going on. And what didn't work also is that we had difficulty learning how to rest. And that's a conscious feminine energy. It's receiving rest from ourselves. It's knowing when to say, no, I'm not available for that. If someone asks us to do something, instead of saying yes, when we really meant no, it's pausing and saying, let me think about this. Actually, no, I'm not able for that. Right? I'm not able to help right now with that. And that's it. Just knowing, trusting your inner knowing to guide you when to say yes. So your yeses mean yes and your nos mean no. So what is healing now for women as Gen Xers is that there's a softening that's finally rising up and that we are asking for reciprocity. We're wanting to be equals in our partnerships and we're allowing ourselves to be met. We're not demanding. I think the ERA movement, the Equal Rights Amendment in the 70s and early 80s it was feminism with a fist. It was like, we want to be equal. We want to have our rights. We want to be earning the same money as men. And there were a lot of women who went out into the workforce and they had to wear their masculine hat. And what happened was that as they were wearing their masculine hats in the workplace, they came home with their masculine hat still on, the energy of, I like to call it general energy in a feminine form. I saw it very much in my mother and in a lot of the women in my life growing up. As I watched them, they were very capable. They were raising big families and they had to step into their masculine energy. The thing is, that can work if you know when to set the hat down. That energy can be set down and you can step back into a feminine energy that's able to receive and not be shaking a fist, demanding equal rights, but showing up in a conscious feminine energy that invites the conscious masculine to hold that structure so she can soften into that structure and learn how to receive, learn how to be equal, giving and taking there with a partner in a very different way than what we saw modeled. There's a softening there. Can you feel it? That feminine, that conscious feminine is starting to rise up again, but without a fist, but with a heart wide open. That's the difference. That's what's going to start to change the tide of things. And I know we're feeling it now. Yes, there's still some women shaking a fist, and that is their path. But there are more and more women that are rising up and showing up with themselves first, tending to their energies in a compassionate way, with more awareness of what didn't work and what does work and what is working and what is inviting men to step into that space equally, sharing, connecting, intimacy, all of the things that we didn't see modeled are finally starting to click. And it's so beautiful because I think this is where it's all starting to change. The somatic invitation for women here is hand on your heart and ask the question, what actually happens if I stop managing everything? What a beautiful question. What actually happens if I stop managing everything around me, trying to think that I need to control it or fix it in order to feel safe? When I can tend to myself, to my emotions, to stay present with me, to know deeply how emotions move through me, to stay instead of running or numbing out or distracting or fixing others, and not even taking myself on as a project that I need to fix, but to just stay present and honor what is, what wants to move through me. That starts to change everything. So now let's talk about the millennials. The millennials were born between 1981 and 1996. And the millennials were raised by Gen Xers, and they were, or younger boomers, during change and economic stress. This was the recession time, right? Men, how they were parented, there was a little bit more emotional language, and they were encouraged to talk, but often there was little modeling of emotional regulation. They didn't see their parents really doing it yet, although there was more talk about it. The strategies that formed for men as millennials were a deeper understanding of themselves. And then they began to analyze things and seek meaning. Well, what must this mean? Because here we are still living from our neck up, thinking and strategizing ways to understand ourselves in a deeper way, but not really allowing ourselves to be embodied, which is a feminine thing, is to receive our emotions into our body instead of living up here thinking about it and analyzing it. Does that make sense? So what didn't work for men parented this way is that they began to overthink, and they had difficulty actually taking action on the things that they were trying to make meaning of. Like they could conceptualize the idea of sitting with emotion, but the actual doing it, really difficult. And they became more over identified with their wounds because now they're in their heads over analyzing what went wrong. And you see how where our attention goes, our energy flows. If we're thinking about all the things that went wrong that should never have happened to us or whatever as kids, that becomes our focus. And we start identifying with what was wrong. What was wrong with our parents, or what was wrong with how I was brought up. Instead of actually coming down into your body and saying, oh, I'm safe to be here while I feel my emotions. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to numb out or distract myself. I'm going to stop analyzing it and actually sitting with my emotions, because when they finally release, because I finally felt them, I can actually access deeper parts of myself and create a deeper capacity for intimacy here, which creates deeper intimacy with everything else in life, especially those you are in relationship with. So, what is healing now for men who were raised as millennials is more embodiment. They're more able to stay in their body to feel a deeper responsibility around self connection instead of disconnection, and more grounded masculinity without shame. Because what grounded masculinity looks like is vulnerability. It's the courage to say, I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm feeling horny, or I'm so excited about us, and opening their heart to receive and give love in a brand new way. And there's no shame in that. It's actually the most beautiful conscious masculine energies that are starting to rise up. The somatic invitation here is to be present in the body. To invite embodiment means to be present. And that can look like just being still, closing your eyes, and naming 3 sensations that you're feeling in your body in the moment. It brings you back into your body. There doesn't need to be a story of why I'm feeling this way or what's moving through you. It's just being able to be aware of sensations and naming it. And that brings you right here, present in your body. And that's embodiment. That's the practice. It's so simple. And the more you do that, the more safe you feel in your body to allow those old emotions to finally come so they can go. Our emotions are meant to move. It's energy in motion, emotion. And they never wanted to come and stay. But when we don't feel them, they can't pass through. So they stick in our bodies, in our systems, in different parts of our bodies, depending on the energetic level of their frequency. If they're heavy, like shame and guilt and remorse and regret and anger, they stick in parts of our body and they start to become the energetic frequency of dis-ease, disease, and they start to somatically manifest as like heart problems or kidney problems or lung problems or neck problems, depending on the degree of their frequency. So coming into your body to allow, to first of all, know that you're safe to feel and that you're not going to run. You're going to stay and feel, be brave enough to let that old shame, that old guilt, that old anger finally come, and you stay. And it doesn't take long. It's like 90 seconds at the most of feeling that just come up, whether it's rage or whatever it is. Let it move through you. Let the tears come. Tears are just the chemicals of trauma finally being released. Let them flow. There's no shame in that. Let yourself scream. Let the anger rage and come through you so it can finally be gone. And then the relief that you feel is like, oh, none other. You literally feel lighter because you're not carrying the frequency of those heavy emotions anymore. Okay, women who are millennials, how they were parented is they were told they could be anything. They carried a high expectation of themselves and others, and social comparison got amplified because of social media. Okay, the strategies that formed around this type of parenting was achievement and awareness. More awareness that achievement was something to be sought for, but maybe it didn't always need to be that way. And self-development, more willingness to turn in and be self-responsible for their lives and not so dependent on other to tend to them and their needs. So there's more a turning in and tuning in for women than there were for men. There's more emotional fluency. Girls and groups, there's a lot more groups forming for women to support each other in their emotional fluency. What didn't work is that there was a heightened anxiety for a lot of these women. The pressure to be perfect and the exhaustion that came from the pressure to be perfect and to look and be a certain way on social media. What is beginning to heal now for these women is their nervous system is learning how to be tended, that they're taking time for self-care. And it's not just going to the gym and doing yoga and working out and eating healthy. It's actually our nervous systems as we tune in, as we turn in and tune in, that presence starts to regulate our nervous system because we're not focused out here trying to navigate everyone else's emotions. We're finally taking care here first. And when we do that, everything else starts to align. So our nervous system starts to regulate. We're redefining what success even is. Is it having a job that pulls in so much money? Is it having more children? Is it having a bigger house or more cars or whatever that looks like? It's redefining what is success. Is it monetary? Is it liberation, emotional liberation and freedom from all of the anxiety that we were raised with, no matter what generation? And the third thing that's it's beginning to heal is there's a partnership coming in relationship, in romantic relationships and with everything else, that to be in partnership means you're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You're solidly knowing your systems here. You have a heightened capacity for intimacy here. And so therefore that starts to show up in everything else in your life, especially in your partnerships. You're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You're standing solid on your throne, and you actually show up in a way that is empowered, that invites others in with the same energy of empowerment. The somatic invitation here is to exhale longer than your inhale. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but as you take a breath in, and then you release for a longer extended period of time on your exhale. Just notice what happens in your body. And the statement is, I am allowed to arrive as I am. I love that. I am allowed to arrive as I am. It's not perfect. It was never meant to be. We're human. There's no such thing as perfect. The Greek definition for perfection is wholeness, something that's complete, which means that you've had enough lived experience to understand yourself and others in a deeper way. There's so much more compassion when you turn towards your lived experience, not as something that you should be ashamed of or that you believe shouldn't have ever happened, but as you turn towards your lived experience and you understand the purpose of it because it's carved something out of you that brings more depth, more understanding, more empathy for everyone else on a path just like us. We're all on the hero or heroine's journey here. Our experience as humans is a journey, and we each have our own version of it. Okay, Gen Z. This is the final one we'll discuss here. And these people were born between 1997 and 2012. And they were raised by millennials and the Gen Xers and digital saturation. So men, how were Gen Z men parented? More validation, less structure, and heavy screen influence. At this point, when we think of boomers and Gen Xers, they literally didn't have screens. It just didn't exist. There was more imagination in play. There was more connection with humans instead of screens. The Gen Z, from the get-go, they had access to screens and they became very adept at how to use that for emotional regulation. So the strategies that formed out of this parenting style for men is emotional openness, being more open because now they've been on social media and there's more exposure to people talking about things, speaking truth, noticing the different sides, men and women having these conversations or not, still some of the blame that's going on, but being more aware and open to their emotions because by now they're starting to see things differently and what they saw modeled is different. And they regulate their emotions through stimulation. And they also will do anything to avoid the shame because there can be a lot of disconnection from self when there's a hyper stimulation through and believing that if I can get on social media, I can regulate my emotions through stimulating myself in a different way. Can you see how this has become a thing? If you're a parent of a Gen Zer, then you have been privy to this information. Why this hasn't worked is that there's a lot of overwhelm. There's too much information to take in, and it actually creates a shutdown after the overwhelm. And there is a difficulty in this generation. I would say men, yes, for sure, and women too. There's a difficulty with stillness. When there's stillness, there's this sense that, nope, I need to keep moving. I need to be scrolling. I need to be doing something, anything but being still. And that is so interesting because it's just the way that we see it played out. Okay, so, and there's an uncertainty. Why this hasn't worked for men raised as Gen Zers is that there is uncertainty about identity because there's so much fluidity in sexuality at this point, and it's exposed. Everyone's talking about it, whether we want to hear it or not. So there is an uncertainty about who do I be with so many choices. And what is healing now for men as Gen Zers is there is more structure. They're bringing more structure back into their life, more discipline with compassion. So they're able to be more compassionate because they've been in relationship with females that maybe are more open and expecting them as men to talk about their feelings more and more because that's what's happening. That's the shift that's coming now. And there's more depth and direction. That's beginning to heal now too. The somatic invitation for this population is to once again ground, put your feet flat into the floor, look around the room, and just say, I am here. I'm here. Maybe even put your hand on your heart. I love this because when you can ground yourself and look around your surroundings and declare yourself as a participator in this life, I am here. It's a very root chakra healing energy. Our root chakra is I am. I am here to participate. I'm here to take up space. And I'm here because I want to be and I'm choosing to be. That is a healthy root chakra. So that's the beginning of staying grounded, creating structure for yourself, and depth and direction is grounding down in and saying, I am choosing to be here right now. It's so beautiful. For women as Gen Zers, how they were parented is they were encouraged to express more of their emotions. They have a strong identity focus. So they're really watching still a lot of comparison, right? Looking sideways on social media and comparing themselves with everyone else out there. And that can be really, really heavy and hard. So there's a strong identity focus, like, who am I? Who am I? And there's an immense visibility pressure to post, to have an identity, to promote it or to make it very visible. That's the strategy that started to formulate. And what didn't work for this population is the fragility under stress. The pressure to perform and to be seen a certain way is it's kind of suffocating, right? Actually, I'm going to back it up here. The strategies that formed were more authenticity because as they stood in front of all of the social media presences, I think they started to begin and are starting to still understand that, wait, that's not me. I'm not going to perform or pretend. I saw that didn't work for my parents and beyond back. I want to show up in my authenticity. That's the strategy that started to step forward. And there was more language around boundaries, like their yeses meant yes and their no's mean no. And that's so beautiful. And the more social awareness, seeing what's happening in the world and what seems like not justice and maybe speaking some of that forward. Okay, what didn't work is the fragility under stress, like the comparison and all of that, trying to keep up if they haven't stepped into their authenticity yet, this desire to hold it all together. And there's a lot of fragility there when the stress starts to amp up or ramp up. And performance of identity. So what is my identity? If it's not authentic, if it's not authentic, who am I? What have I been performing that maybe isn't authentic? And noticing this, what didn't work, and then burnout from constant exposure, always being seen, always putting themselves out there, and realizing that that's not sustainable and it's not something that I want to keep doing, and stepping into a new way. So what is beginning to heal now for this generation is more resilience, more inner anchoring. Like I said, it's more turning in and tuning in, and the intimacy beyond image, knowing that, oh my gosh, when I actually am more still and sit with my emotions, I can have intimacy with myself. And when I've done that, that means that I get to invite intimacy into my life on every level. I'm more intimate with my finances. I'm more aware and intimate in my my romantic relationships and I call in different partners because I am solid here. I've done the work here. Now, what I'm calling in will meet me in that same intimacy. And that is so beautiful. The somatic invitation here is hand on your belly and to ask, what is true beneath how I appear? What a beautiful question of radical self-responsibility of what is my true nature? Is it performance? Is it hosting a certain style or a certain way to be that maybe isn't what I am? It's stepping into the authenticity that you are and letting that be enough. So, what is true beneath how I appear to be? What a beautiful question for all of us. I think every single one of these somatic invitations can be done by anyone in any generation, male or female, and it can always be an invitation for deeper intimacy with self. When we start to get curious about why we do things, why we say things, why we don't do things or don't say things, that is so beautiful. What we're doing is we're healing because time is relative. There is no past or future. We have now. So when we start to do this inner work here, you have to understand and know how beautiful that is for all the past and future generations that come in our lines, and not even in our lines, anyone. The whole collective starts to benefit from each person having a deeper intimacy with self. That sends a ripple. We're always sending ripples out. Are we aware of what our ripple or our signal is? If it's one of deeper self intimacy, I promise you that will start to change everything in our world because we did it here first. Everyone's world starts to change because it sends out the energy of permission to be intimate with ourselves on every level, sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, on every level of our lives. We start to become familiar with how we move, how emotions move through us, how we show up, how we're not showing up, how we want to raise ourselves to a level of acceptance, accepting all the versions of us and not deeming ourselves as wrong or having made a mistake or that I should have done something different. No, just pure compassion. In meditation, they call it loving awareness. It's just awareness of the versions of us that prior to now, strangely, in the past thinking, because you can only think about the past now, and giving that version of us compassion for doing the best that they could with what they had been given. That's it. That's just so simple. And that's how it plays out. So the invitation through all of it, all of this, the men and women of each generation were responding to the same conditions with different adaptations. And it's beautiful to look back on right now in this moment, how all the generations before us were really doing the best that they could with what they saw modeled, with the energy of their time, with the themes and the adaptations that they saw happening all around them, and their innate knowing of how to survive and how to receive love, how to be loved. And we've all been doing it in the most beautiful human way. And now we get to help each other be more intimate with each other because we're doing it here first. So now we get to keep the wisdom that we have gathered from our forefathers and mothers and update the strategies. Now we're doing it differently. So this is seeing our parents and grandparents, those that came before us, with so much compassion. There is no blame. There is no shame in any of it. What a gift to be able to give to those who came before us our authenticity, our self-awareness, our level of compassion and empathy for ourselves, it just flows out naturally to everything. That we can see ourselves without shame now, that we recognize the patterns that came and stop them if they want to be stopped, and to feel hope for change. There's no villains here, there's only evolution. We came here to experience what it's like to be human, which means to be fully alive, which means you get to feel all of the most beautiful energies as well as all of the darkest, heaviest ones. And when we're willing and able to hold space for both of those emotions and not deem one better than another, or one is right and one is wrong, that's when we're fully living. We're fully alive when we can feel it all and know that we're safe. We're not running anymore. We're stable. And my friend who just joined reminded me that it is Aries in Saturn today. February is a very interesting month. The end of this month, the last day of February, all the 6 of our planets are aligning on that day. There are crazy things going on in the skies right now that affect the energy that is affecting all of us, whether you're aware of it or not. Another thing that is happening right now in the collective is the closing of the energy of the Chinese New Year. It's closing up this week, and in 4 days we start a new year. And we just are leaving the Chinese New Year in 2025 was the year of the snake. If you aren't aware of that, that is a very feminine yin energy. It coils and it sits and it waits and it's patient and it sheds. It sheds its skin. It's not afraid to shed and let go of what no longer serves it. We are in the final days of this shedding. So if things feel heavy now, please have compassion for yourself, with yourself. Sit with what it wants to rise up so it can finally release. What I'm sitting with clients is this comes up because, oh boy, it's coming up. And I'm not going to lie, it's coming up here too, in my own world. Just having gone through being in the hospital for some days and had a couple of surgeries, I can see what is releasing and what is asking to be released. And I am glad and grateful to let it go. And one of the practices that I invite my clients to do, because I think sometimes it's easy to say, oh, just release it, let it go. But there's sometimes we cling to things that are familiar because they're familiar. We don't want to change. Our mind is wired for familiarity. It wants to grasp the things that are familiar instead of change because that feels too uncertain. But we live in a world and nature is uncertain. Things are always changing. That is the only thing that is constant is change. So how interesting that we as humans we aren't a part of nature. We are nature. Why is it so wired into us to resist change? That's a question to sit with and to contemplate, because the more willing you are to bless it and let it be, to actually allow things to be as they are and not try to figure them out as good, bad, right, or wrong, now you're not in resistance and change can move through you and you can bless it and let it be. So instead of saying, I release you, I'm just letting this go, that can be really hard for some people. But if you can say, I bless it and I let it be, doesn't that give some sense of like, there's a rest in that. There's ease in that. It's simple. Let it be simple. So these last final days of the Chinese New Year of the snake, all that wants to be released, bless it and let it be. Just set it aside. It doesn't need your attention anymore. You've done the work. You've done the hard work. And if you haven't, let it move through you and bless it and let it be. And know that it's time to shift our energy. In 4 days, we are stepping into the Chinese New Year of the horse. It's the year of the horse, which is, not surprisingly, a very conscious masculine energy. So now we've come out of yin, snake energy, which is receptive, it's still, it's the void. It's where everything begins from. All of creation starts from the void, the black hole, right? From nothing, something comes and it emerges from a seed. Anything, all these plants and these beautiful trees, these oaks and redwoods, they start from a seed. So when you think of what is a seed in your life now that you have over the last year shed all the things that no longer serve you, all the energies that you're finally willing to release and let go of, to bless and let be, take your seed and with an intention from that true yin stillness, it invites and it gives and it catalyzes true yang, masculine movement, action. This is your moment. So in these next few days, I invite you to think of what you are seeding, what you have been seeding for this last year of in stillness and letting go and letting things be stripped away and letting them, just blessing them and letting them go, knowing that now with the power, the empowerment of this female conscious energy, you're inviting this was the initiation, and now you've crossed the threshold, and now you're stepping into yang movement, which is healthy, conscious, masculine energy. So get up on the back of that horse and ride into the new year with your intentions grounded, knowing that whatever it is that you truly desire, your heart's desire, you will be taken there. Set the intentions and go. This is your time. If you've dreamt of anything big or wild or impossible, anything is possible if you believe it is. Set your intentions high and trust that the universe already knows what you desire. It's already working in your behalf if you believe that it is. When you start living from abundance, you start seeing it show up in your life. When you are living from the energy of lack, there's not enough. There's too many people everywhere. It's already saturated. There's not enough space. There's not enough. Can you see how that is a contraction of your energy right there? And it starts with your thoughts. So when you trust God, source, the universe that you were never separate from, you start to know that abundance is here because it's already there and we're not separate from it. The universe is abundant. Our bodies have perfect well-being. That is their true nature. We have been conditioned over and over for generations to believe something not true about our universe and about ourselves. So now we are taking back our power. We're getting on the back of the horse in 4 days, but that energy is ramping up. I don't know if you can feel it. It's an invitation to step into conscious masculine action. And that means not up and out, trying to control and manipulate. It's actually very grounded and very stable. What it is the structure that the conscious feminine desires so deeply, because when that structure is there, grounded in, the feminine can show up and rest and receive. Can you feel that? It's such a beautiful, those two energies in relationship with each other is how we are going to move forward in this world in a beautiful, conscious way. And when we do it here and we give ourselves permission to show up in our conscious masculine and feminine energy, no longer the wounding, that was our parents and our grandparents and before them, back and back. The silent generation. I just spent the whole hour here talking about all the different generations, starting with the boomers, and then the Gen Xers, and then the millennials, and then the Gen Zers, and all the ways that we were parented, what worked, what didn't work, how we had to form strategies to adapt to the things that weren't working, and how we're healing now. How women, the divine feminine, is finally rising up, not with a fist, but with a heart wide open. And it invites any conscious masculine energy into the conversation, and that's where we meet. And it's so beautiful because those energies live in each of us. When we can balance our masculine and feminine energy in a conscious way, it invites everyone around us to do the same for themselves. And that's how the collective will change. It starts with each individual person having radical self responsibility to show up for themselves in a way that is radical. It's a radical thing to show up for yourself that way. But when you do it, I promise you, the energy that you live in now starts to expand beyond just you. And people feel it. They notice a change in you, whether they say it or not. What are you doing differently? You seem at peace. You seem happier. You seem more aware. You seem more open, not contracted. Can you see its energy? You can't fake energy. The world, our reality, doesn't respond to what we want. It responds to who we are. If we are living in lack and believing that everything is lacking, that will be our reality. When we decide, because it's a decision, it's not a choice. We decide. A choice is choosing between this or that. The decision for you to choose a new way to be starts from the core of you. It is your decision to decide to let those old energies that have kept you stuck, looping in patterns of thought, of lack, of depression or anxiety, or that things are this way and they will never change, or the world is going to hell. And that, what are we going to do? We can stay there, but where our attention goes, our energy flows. And if that's where your attention goes, I promise your reality will be more lack, more depression, more anxiety. What if you could decide right now, and all the energy that's in the collective, to take that yin energy and plant the seed in these last days of the snake and transmute it. Take all the lack, bless it and let it be, and decide to step forward into conscious energies of abundance and compassion for self first, and then out into everything else, for love, for joy, for empathy, for understanding, for bridging what was with what wants to be. To bridge that old energy, maybe actually don't bridge it, shut that down. I think back in April, I had an awareness of an energy shift. And I don't know if it was just karmic or what was going on, but it was, I woke up one day and I'm like, oh my gosh, everything shifted. I am no longer, whenever I'd start to feel old energy of like, oh, I wish that had happened differently or whatever, I was like, no, I have already done the work there. I'm no longer allowing myself to be tethered, literally tethered energetically to my past, believing that I still have to heal and they're broken and I have to do this and that. No, no more wounded masculine of being up and out and over efforting my healing. No, I've done the work for so many years. Now I'm blessing it and letting it be. And I'm deciding to stand in my power, which I trust now because I know I'm safe to feel whatever comes. And I'm no longer subject to being a victim of my past. Mm-mm. That's empowerment. And it's not done with a fist. It's not over efforted. It's very feminine. It's stepping back and down, grounding in and saying, I trust that as I sit on my throne, I have the power to decide what my thoughts will be, where I give my attention to. Because where I give my attention to, my energy will flow, and that creates my reality. So I'm not turning back to the past anymore. I am deciding that my reality will be what I decide it's going to be by what I think, what I believe. And I believe in me to decide that it's going to be the best, because it is. The world that we live in, God, source, the universe, it's benevolent. It wants the best for us always. And if we trust that, it will work with us, for us, to create the reality that we decide it wants to be. And it doesn't mean that our life is perfect and that bad things don't happen. It just means when things are shifting and moving to align us with our highest timeline, our highest frequency of abundance, things have to shift to break down the old way. So when things start to go sideways, like for example, I was in the hospital last week twice for surgeries. I had to have a pacemaker put in. My heart was broken. And for a couple of decades, if I'm really honest, it has felt broken. It hasn't been able to support me hiking or even climbing stairs or anything. And I never got the answers from multiple doctors over many years. They finally caught it. And I'm so grateful. I could be angry and be like, oh my gosh, how come they didn't find this earlier or whatever? But I'm like, I don't know all the reasons why, and I don't need to know. I trust that they will come if they're supposed to, the meaning behind all of it. But I'm grateful to have had this experience because it's humbled me. It's made me more aware of how precious life is and how grateful I am to be here, enjoying this life and deciding that I get to be the creator of my reality by what I believe is true. And what I believe is true is that we are always guided, and that even if it's hard and messy and chaotic, that is everything coming into perfect alignment for our highest good, and everyone else's too. That's the wild thing about the universe. It's never a win-lose. No one's ever losing. Think of every relationship you've been in. It's always a win-win. There's something there to learn in every relationship we've ever been in. No matter how we defined it, there is always a lesson and a gem of wisdom to take away from every experience, no matter what it is. If we will see it that way, if we see it as shit, it will continue to be so. If we see it as fertilizer, it will continue to be so. So my invitation for anyone listening to this, whether you're listening to it here now, thank you for being here, or if you're watching this later, is decide. And these final days of wrapping up the energy of letting go of what no longer wants to tether us, set ourselves free, liberate our energy back into what is true. Our true nature is abundance. It's love. It's compassion. Those are the strongest, most powerful energies that exist in our universe. Why not tap into those and be supported and trust that you're always being guided and supported to something better? Even if everything is falling apart, it's falling apart perfectly for your highest evolution. And when you live in that energy, I promise you, there is magic to be had. Thank you for being here. I also want to let you know that as I'm kind of sitting with all of this energy, there's something that has emerged that is so beautiful. And I'm so excited to start stepping into this in my life because I'm like, this hasn't just been what I've studied these past 10 years after my divorce, but it's been my lived experience as well. Being married for almost 30 years, raising 6 children, living abroad, traveling alone, getting my degrees. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I've given my focus to serving women. I have a lot of male clients. And as I've created these spaces for men and women, I am noticing that men are wanting to step into these spaces and be more conscious. And so now I am taking my focus not away from women, but I'm giving more focus to men and couples. And I'm calling it the Conscious Partner Project. It's for men and women to learn the skills because as we talked about this generational patterning of silence, of inability to regulate emotion here first so they can do it in partnership with other, how important it is to not shame ourselves for not knowing how to do that because we never saw it modeled, but to actually say, there's no shame in that. It's a skill. And if no one ever taught it to me, why would I blame myself? Why would I blame them? No one taught them either. But now we know better. And when we know better, we do better. We saw what didn't work, and now we get to step forward with resources and skills to know how to communicate, how to speak your needs from your heart, how to let your walls, your heart walls, literally come down. Our sacred needs are to be seen, heard, and understood. But the tricky thing is, we don't know how to show up to be seen, heard, and understood. When we have a heart wall, we're hiding behind it and we desire intimacy and connection, but we don't know how until we can take our walls down, be safe with ourselves to take our walls down first. And then there's a bridge that we can create between ourselves and other because we did it here first. That is what I'm so excited to start promoting and teaching and inviting people into these spaces to have these conversations so men can learn the skills of intimacy. And women, if you've been on this path for very long, you've had to step into radical self-responsibility to start noticing what your patterns have been, what worked and what didn't, to let the old go, and there's no shame in that, and how to decide how you want to move forward. We as humans are wired for deep intimacy, connection. And when we are able to achieve that here first, a capacity for intimacy with all of our systems here, then we have a greater capacity for intimacy with others. Can you imagine what it would be like to have depth that keeps, because love is, we are eternal beings, and love is eternal. It's ever expanding. There's no end to it. It keeps getting deeper and it keeps expanding. And if you've ever experienced that, I know you know what I'm talking about. So when we believe that we are eternal beings and that our capacity for love and depth and connection is limitless, doesn't that sound like heaven on some levels? If time is relative, where is heaven and hell really? Do they not exist as states of thought? Our reality is created by what we believe and think. If we believe we are limited and unlovable, or that love is this shallow, that there is no depth, there is no connection, there aren't any bridges, that is suffering. That is hell. Can you imagine the heaven of stepping into the belief and the knowing that I am the one who creates my heaven by what I believe to be true. And I know I'm limitless. And I know that I invite in partners who believe the same. And so together, we create a connection that is so sound and so deep and so intimate that now our connection that lives here emotionally becomes everything. And now, can you imagine what our physical intimacy is like? It's no more mutual masturbation, which is what a lot of couples are experiencing, because if there is no emotional depth and connection, how can that be translated into physical intimacy? So I know it sounds crass, but I'm going to start speaking the truth out loud because a lot of people aren't speaking it. But when there is emotional depth here, the physical intimacy goes deeper and it keeps expanding because both of you have experienced it here. You know that it keeps going deeper and expanding on every level of everything in your life. So this is the invitation to, in these next few days, bless and let be what no longer serves you. Be aware of it. Name it if you want. Let it move through you. Here's our chemicals of trauma being released. Let it come up. Bless it. Let it be. Let it go. Offer it up. And then step into the energy of what is it that my heart desires? Because what our heart desires is our soul's guidance if we will listen. Are you listening? Are you still enough to actually hear what your soul's guidance is? And it's as simple as, what are you drawn to? What are you drawn to? And sometimes it can be easy as not knowing what you're drawn to, but trusting what you're not drawn to. Not that, not that. Oh, that. If it lights you up, it's your path. Don't judge it. Just go into it and you learn what your yeses are, what your nos are, if it really is true, if that really is something you desire, and allow it to be so. Okay. If you have questions, I have compiled some dialogue for partners. I have 5 or 6 different rounds of questioning for one partner to the other, where one partner shares and the other listens, and then you switch. And it's an invitation in to step into intimacy with each other, to ask questions that maybe you've never thought of asking, things you've never thought of talking about. And if you have a script, sometimes that makes it easier to do so because it doesn't feel so vulnerable. If you have a script, you're like, oh, these are the questions we're supposed to ask each other. Noelle said so. Blame it on me. I don't care. You can throw me under the bus all day. Noelle's making me do this or whatever. But if it makes it easier, go ahead and blame me. Whatever makes it easier for you to show up in relationship with your partner, asking questions, going a little bit deeper. Such a beautiful practice. If you want these questions, DM me, reach out to me, however you can access me, and I will send these to you. It's too late for me to go into them now. But thank you. Thank you. If you have any thoughts or questions before I sign off, I want to keep this within the time constraint and wrap this up. But thank you for showing up here. I invited both men and women here today. So I'm going to send this out to everyone so it can start to initiate some conversations with yourself for radical self-responsibility and radical self-tending and intimacy here. And then it will feel so natural and so, what's the word? It's like bliss. When you feel that emotional connection, it's like suddenly there's bells that are ringing that you couldn't hear before. You're like, wait, this is what I was missing out on? What the heck? I will never stop having deeper and deeper capacity for intimacy here because I know what it brings on the other side. And I will never stop that because I know there is no limit to the depth and the expansion of love, of connection, of abundance, of joy, of bliss and ecstasy, and all the things that make life feel like heaven. And when that is how you are in relationship with yourself and everything else in life, that's heaven. You're living in heaven now. It's not something you're waiting for at some future time. Maybe it is. I don't know all the answers, but why not step into the energy of heaven here? Why not? It's your decision. You get to decide who you be. So thank you for being here. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. So much love for everyone and all the energy that's moving through everyone right now. I know it can feel heavy, but I love and believe in you. I know you can do this or you wouldn't be here watching this. Namaste.